Hey everyone, it's Vesaverse, and today we're going to dissect a new topic. Using our fancy scalpel here, we're going to dissect this bug, Staphylococcus aureus. In this lecture, we're going to talk about every part of this word and what does it mean. So let's start. This is our outline for the lecture. We're going to talk about the characteristics of this bug, the toxins it produces, the signs and symptoms it causes, and then lastly, we're going to talk about the treatment. Now, first of all, when we talk about Staphylococcus, we have to keep in mind that we have two different categories. One is Staph aureus, our main focus of this lecture, and others including Staph saprophyticus and Staph epidermidis. And how do we differentiate between these? We look at coagulase. Coagulase is an enzyme that is produced by Staphylococcus aureus, but not produced in saprophyticus or epidermidis. Now let's take a deeper dive into Staph aureus and what it actually means. Now when we look at the word Staphylococcus, Staphylo, it's a Greek word meaning a bunch of grape. Coccus means it has a circular shape, it's round, and aureus comes from the Greek word meaning yellow or golden. So when we grow these bacteria on cultures, they will grow into golden colonies. They have a yellowish. The last important feature we're going to talk about that this bacteria possess is that it produces a biofilm. This biofilm protects this bug from antibiotics. Here you give an antibiotic, it cannot penetrate and reach the bacteria, therefore rendering this antibiotic useless. Alright, now let's talk about the enzymes that are produced by this bug. When we say that a specific bug like Staph aureus is catalase positive, then we mean that it produces this enzyme. And what catalase exactly does is that it converts hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. The second enzyme here is coagulase, and coagulase is where this bacteria converts fibrinogen, the inactive form of fibrin, into the active form, which is fibrin, and therefore forming more like clot. Now, the thing is, the reason this is important for the boards and the words is that this bacteria is extremely common. It's so common to the extent that it colonizes 1/4 of the population. Imagine the number. So if we look at this happy guy here, looking at this guy, we're going to try to remember what parts exactly it most commonly colonizes. It most commonly colonizes the nares, the axilla, as well as the groin. Now, these individuals, they don't develop any symptoms. They're mostly asymptomatic. Unless you have some situation like being immunocompromised or you have a breach in your skin, that this bacteria is going to make its way through and it's going to go all the way, penetrate through your skin, causing infections. Shortly, we're going to talk about what it exactly causes, but for now, let's discuss the superantigens. Now, this bug produces superantigens. These superantigens are technically toxins. The most important ones we're going to talk about in this lecture are TSST1 and enterotoxin. TSST1 stands for toxic shock. Let me write it here. Toxic shock syndrome, toxin 1. What this toxin does is that it comes and it binds to MHC2 receptors, rendering the release of cytokines. It's not just a simple release of cytokines. This is going to be a cytokine storm. And this cytokine storm manifests itself as fever, rash, decreased blood pressure, as well as end organ failure. And when we see these last two symptoms together, this is called a shock. And since the causative agent in this case is a bacteria, it's going to be called a septic shock. For more about septic shock, we have dedicated a detailed video in this topic. I recommend you checking it out. This is when the bacteria lands in the food, causing food poisoning. When someone digests this food, they will develop nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea in a matter of 2 to 6 hours after ingestion. Now that we've discussed these, let's discuss the most interesting part of this lecture: signs and symptoms of Staph aureus. What does this terrible small bug causes? Small but smart. Okay, so what it causes is, 1, pneumonia. And it's not just any pneumonia, it's specifically in patients who has already been infected with a virus. So when you see a patient with pneumonia due to Staph aureus, you have to think that this patient had already a viral infection and then they got infected by this opportunistic bug. The second interesting sign is disseminated infection. Disseminated infections happen when this bacteria finds its way through the skin. And these patients mostly are IV drug abusers. And as we've discussed before, it's a part of our normal flora. Here's your skin, and here's the bacteria. It's just sitting there. Once it finds the opportunity to get into your skin, it does. And that's why these drug abusers have disseminated infections. This includes septic arthritis, like shown here, osteomyelitis, the infection of the bones, and lastly, infective endocarditis. It also causes gastroenteritis, and this is what we've just discussed. It's due to enterotoxins. Toxic shock syndrome is due to TSST1 toxin that we've just discussed. For the skin infections, we have 2 main types. One is impetigo. This affects the epidermis and it's most commonly seen in children. The other form of skin infections that is more common in adults is cellulitis. And that is kind of deeper as compared to impetigo. Alright, now that we understand everything about this bug and what it does, its signs and symptoms and its characteristics, let's discuss the treatment. Now, when it comes to treatment, we have to check, is this bacteria methicillin sensitive Staph aureus or is it methicillin resistant Staph aureus? And the difference between these is that this one is much more severe and is typically a nosocomial infection, meaning that patients get it from hospital settings. Alright, so for the methicillin sensitive Staph aureus, it's easier to treat this one. We can give penicillins, but not just any penicillins. We're specifically talking about penicillinase resistant penicillins. These are also commonly known as anti-staph penicillins. And the most important one in this category is nafcillin. In the hospital, you will always hear them saying NAF for staph. So this is an important clinical pearl that you can keep in mind. Methicillin, this is where the name comes from. Methicillin sensitive Staph aureus and methicillin resistant Staph aureus. For this bug, we have very few drugs. That's why we have to use them wisely in only severely ill patients, again, as we've discussed in nosocomial infections. In this case, we can either use vancomycin or 5th generation cephalosporins, that is ceftaroline. One more thing that is worth mentioning about Staph aureus is this. If you see a patient going to the OR, what antibiotic, prophylactic antibiotic would you give them? Now, we have already said that Staph aureus colonizes the skin in 1/4 of the population. So if a patient is going to go through surgery where you're going to cut through the skin, then this bacteria has the opportunity to cause an infection. And to stop that, we give 1st generation cephalosporins, and that is either cefalixin or more commonly cefazolin. All Alright guys, that was the end of our lecture for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you did, subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments below what topic you would like to discuss in the next lecture.